Hey everyone. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you think about the characters and their choices. Enjoy the story. It all started with the feeling of having it all but still feeling empty. I had the house, the car, the job, and the husband. Tom and I had been together for years, and by all accounts, we were a perfect match. He was successful, smart, kind, and always there when I needed him. But something was missing. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew something wasn't right. It wasn't that Tom wasn't a good husband. He was great. Really, he worked hard. And when he was home, he was present, but over time, the intensity had worn off. We were comfortable with each other, and comfortable was nice, but I didn't want nice. I wanted something else, something more. At first, I didn't know what exactly it was. I didn't want to admit it, but I started feeling bored. I was bored with our routine. I was bored with the conversations. The constant check-ins about what to have for dinner, how the day went, the logistics of running a household. The spark, that thrill, that fire I had felt in the early days of our relationship, it felt gone. And even though I loved Tom, and he loved me, there was this growing emptiness in me. Then came Benz, Tom's best friend, the guy who had been a fixture in our lives ever since we moved to the area. He was charming, funny, confident. And I had always appreciated him in a completely platonic way. Until that one evening. We were having drinks at our house, just the three of us, and it was like something shifted in the air. We were all laughing, but the look Benz gave me lingered a bit too long. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it felt different. More intentional. More charged. I'd caught him looking at me a few times that night, with an intensity that felt more than friendly. The way he smiled when our eyes met made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time, alive. He didn't just see me as Tom's wife. He saw me. I felt like I was being seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. And that made my heart race. After that night, it wasn't like things drastically changed, at least not right away. Benz would stop by occasionally for drinks or dinner, and I would feel that same tension in the air every time. It wasn't anything obvious. He didn't make a move, and neither did I. But the glances, the little comments that lingered longer than necessary, the jokes that always seemed to have a double meaning. Those were new. And I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more. I started to realize that what had been missing in my life wasn't just excitement. It was connection. And I didn't know why, but I started to crave it. Not just the kind of connection I had with Tom, but something deeper. Something that made me feel alive. Something I hadn't realized I needed until it showed up in the form of Benz. He was always at our house. But one night, when Tom had to go away for a work trip, it was just Benz and me. He came over to hang out like usual, but I could feel it in the air from the moment he walked through the door. It was different. He wasn't just there to have a drink. There was a shift in the energy, in the way he looked at me. We started talking about old times, about life, and then the conversation turned personal. I don't know how it happened, but it did. He started asking questions that were more personal than I was used to. Not just about work or family, but about me. How I felt about Tom and our marriage. It wasn't invasive, but it was enough to make me realize that he was paying attention in a way Tom hadn't been for months. I tried to laugh it off at first. But then, when he leaned in a little closer, and his voice dropped an octave, something inside me snapped. I didn't feel scared or uncomfortable. Instead, I felt a rush of excitement. For the first time in so long, someone really saw me, and I wasn't sure if I wanted it to stop. There was this undeniable chemistry between us. It was subtle, but it was there, and I wanted to see how far it would go. I know I shouldn't have, but I didn't push him away. I didn't want to. It wasn't about Tom, not really. It was about me. It was about needing something I had been craving for so long, but I didn't realize how much until that moment. The conversation got quieter, more intimate, until I noticed him inching closer to me. For a split second, I hesitated, but then my body made the decision for me. I kissed him. It wasn't passionate at first, just a soft, tentative touch of lips. But once it happened, it was like a dam had broken. He pulled me closer, and I didn't pull away. I told myself it was just a moment, a mistake, that it would never happen again. But part of me knew that wasn't true. The chemistry between us was undeniable, and now that it was out there, it felt like the weight of it was crushing me. And the worst part, I didn't regret it. When Tom got back a few days later, everything seemed normal. He was his usual self, full of stories about his trip. He didn't suspect anything. But I did. I was a little on edge. Not because I was worried about getting caught, but because the moment with Ben's kept replaying in my head. And I knew that deep down, I had crossed a line. I just didn't know if I was ready to face the consequences yet. I didn't tell anyone about what happened that night. It wasn't just about keeping a secret from Tom, it was about me. About the parts of myself I had neglected for so long. And now, those parts were awake. It wasn't supposed to happen again, but it did. Every time Ben's came over, I felt that same spark, that same undeniable connection. The one I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. It was like he could see right through me, and the more time we spent together, the more intense that feeling became. At first, I tried to push it away. I told myself that it was just a phase, that it was nothing more than a harmless flirtation. But it wasn't. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't just drawn to Ben's because he was charming. It was more than that. He made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in such a long time. I was craving attention, affection, something outside the bubble I had created with Tom. And Ben's, he gave me that. It was one of those quiet afternoons when Tom was at work and Ben's came over just to hang out. I was tired of the same old routine, and honestly, I was starting to crave something more than the predictable comfort of my marriage. Tom was always busy with work. He provided for us. He was always there when I needed him, but he didn't see me the way Ben's did. And I didn't know if it was because I was looking for something outside of my marriage, or if it was something deeper. But I couldn't deny that the pull I felt towards Ben's was getting stronger. That afternoon, as we sat in the living room, the silence between us was thick with anticipation. Ben's sat close to me, maybe a little too close, but I didn't move away. In fact, I leaned into him slightly. I wasn't sure if it was his warmth, or just the comfort of his presence, but I liked it. It felt so easy, so natural, like this was how things were supposed to be. He looked at me, his eyes lingering a little too long, and I knew what he was thinking. I could see it in his face, in the way he barely touched my arm, like he was waiting for me to make the first move. I couldn't help but smile nervously. "I don't know what's wrong with me, Ben's," I said quietly, my voice shaking slightly, but I didn't pull back. "You're not wrong, Anna," he replied, his voice low. "You just need something more. Something that makes you feel like yourself again." The way he said that made my heart race. He was right. I had lost a part of myself along the way, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to admit it, at least not out loud. "Maybe," I said almost to myself. I didn't have the courage to tell him exactly what I was feeling. But he seemed to understand. Before I knew it, his hand was on mine, and his face was inches from mine. My body was trembling, not with fear, but with anticipation. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought it would burst. I felt a wave of heat rush through me, and all the thoughts I had been trying to push aside for days, for weeks, came crashing to the surface. "Anna," he whispered, and the way he said my name made everything inside me twist. I couldn't stop myself. Before I could think it through, I leaned in and kissed him. It was soft at first, almost hesitant, like we were both testing the waters. But it wasn't long before the kiss deepened, and I felt my entire body react. It was more than just physical attraction. It was like I had been starved of something, and he was the answer to all the things I'd been missing. In that moment, I felt a rush of freedom, a sense of release I hadn't even known I was craving. I was no longer just someone's wife. I wasn't the woman who spent her days cleaning and cooking, waiting for Tom to come home from work. I was me, just me, and Ben saw that. He saw me. As we pulled away, I looked into his eyes, breathless, and for a second, it felt like time stopped. He didn't say anything, but I knew. I knew this wasn't just some fleeting thing. It was real. We spent the rest of the afternoon together, talking, laughing, and I felt that same spark growing between us. When he left, there was this strange tension in the air. It wasn't guilt. Not at first, anyway. It was more like I had stepped into a world I didn't know I wanted, but was now afraid to leave. But the moment Ben's left, I was filled with a sense of dread. I'd done something. Something I couldn't take back. I wasn't sure how Tom would react if he ever found out. But the truth was, I didn't want to think about Tom right then. Not because I didn't love him, but because, in that moment, I didn't want to be his wife. I didn't want to be anyone's anything. I just wanted to be free. The next day, when Tom came home, everything felt like it was back to normal. He kissed me, asked how my day was, and told me about work. But I couldn't help but feel a shift. I had crossed a line, and no matter how much I tried to hide it, the guilt was gnawing at me. I wasn't sure if it was guilt over what had happened with Ben's, or guilt over the fact that I had changed somehow, that I had let myself go down this path. I tried to tell myself it was just one mistake. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just a mistake. It was something I wanted. I had tasted something I hadn't even known I was hungry for, and now I wasn't sure I could go back. And that was the part that scared me the most. Because once you've stepped into that world of temptation, it's hard to leave. It was only a matter of time before the truth came out. And when it did, it came crashing down like a ton of bricks. Tom had always been the kind of person who liked to play it safe, always cautious, always prepared. He trusted me, I knew that. But he also had this paranoia about security. After a few break-ins happened in our neighborhood, he decided to install a few hidden cameras in the house. He told me it was just for peace of mind, nothing more. I didn't think much of it at the time. I never imagined that, one day, that same camera would be the thing that would unravel everything. It was during one of Tom's business trips when Ben's and I found ourselves alone in the house again. Tom was away for a few days, and Ben's had come over to hang out, as usual. I was still in the same whirlwind of emotions, still trying to convince myself that what had happened before was a one-time mistake. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I knew I was going to do it again. We were sitting in the living room, talking, but I could feel the tension between us. His presence was electric, and I couldn't help but let my guard down when I was around him. I was so drawn to him. That night, it was different. It didn't feel like a casual visit. We were both edging closer to the line, and I knew we were about to cross it again. I could feel Ben's gaze on me, and before I could second-guess myself, he was leaning in. Our lips met again, soft at first, but then it deepened. My heart was racing, but it wasn't out of guilt, at least not at that moment. It was out of desire. I wanted this. I wanted him. It wasn't about Tom anymore. It wasn't about anything else, but the craving for something I had been missing for so long. We hadn't even made it past the living room when I heard the unmistakable sound of the front door creaking open. I froze. My pulse spiked. Tom. He was home early. I quickly pushed Ben's away, but it was too late. Tom had already stepped inside, and I could see him standing in the doorway, his face unreadable. He didn't say anything at first. He just stared at us, at me, with a look that was a mix of disbelief and hurt. I couldn't bring myself to speak. I couldn't even move. Tom's voice broke the silence, but it was calm, too calm. "So this is how it is?" he asked, his eyes fixed on me, then shifting to Ben's. "Is this really happening right now?" I opened my mouth but no words came out. What was there to say? How could I explain what I had done? I knew I had betrayed him, but seeing him standing there, so composed, so unaffected, it made the guilt even worse. "You knew, didn't you?" Tom asked, his gaze never leaving mine. "You knew I had cameras installed?" I wasn't sure at first, but I had a feeling, and I couldn't stand the thought of not knowing, so I checked. That hit me like a punch in the stomach. Cameras. Of course. Tom had installed them to keep us safe, but I never imagined he would use them to catch me. He didn't raise his voice, didn't yell. Instead, he pulled out his laptop, opened it, and turned the screen towards me. The footage was crystal clear. There was no mistaking it. There I was, kissing Ben's, letting him get too close. My heart dropped as I watched the betrayal unfold on the screen in front of me. Tom had watched it all. Every minute of it. "Here's the part where you explain yourself," he said, his voice eerily calm. I felt like I was sinking. I wanted to disappear, to run, to pretend none of this had happened, but it was too late. I couldn't take it back. I looked at Tom, and for the first time in years, I saw him as a stranger. I had never seen him so cold. So distant. "I didn't mean for this to happen, Tom," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't thinking. I just wanted something." Tom didn't respond at first. He simply shut the laptop, stood up, and walked toward the door. He didn't look at me as he grabbed his keys from the counter. "I'm going to talk to Ben's," he said, his tone devoid of any emotion. "And then we're done. This is over." I wanted to stop him, to beg him to stay, but I couldn't. He didn't want to hear anything I had to say. He was done. And in that moment, I knew I had lost everything. The days after Tom left felt like a lifetime. I stayed in the house, haunted by the silence, overwhelmed by guilt and the weight of everything that had happened. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. I kept replaying the moments when everything had gone wrong, how it had all spiraled out of control, starting with that first kiss with Ben's. And now, Tom was gone. My marriage, my life, shattered in the blink of an eye. But even though Tom was gone, there was still this strange pull, this ache in me. I knew it was wrong. I knew I didn't deserve anything. But I couldn't stop thinking about Ben's. I called him that night. I needed to talk to him. I needed some sort of explanation. I needed to understand why everything had turned into this mess. Anna, Ben said when he picked up the phone. His voice sounded tired, distant. What's going on? I need to see you? I said, my voice shaking. I can't do this alone. I don't know what to do anymore. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing. He hesitated, and I felt a wave of dread. You don't know what you want, he said, finally. His words were low, almost resigned. And honestly, Anna, I think it's too late for any of this. You've already lost everything. I felt a pang in my chest. Please. Just come over. I need to understand. Benz didn't respond immediately, but I heard him sigh. I'll come over, but we need to talk. No more games. You need to face what you've done. When Benz showed up that night, I was already sitting in the living room, anxiously waiting. The door opened, and he stepped inside, his face set in a way that I didn't recognize. He looked different. There was no warmth, no playful teasing, no spark of that connection we used to share. Instead, he looked tired, and something else. Something I couldn't quite place. He sat down across from me, and for the first time, I noticed the distance between us. It felt like an abyss that I couldn't cross. What happened, Anna? Benz asked quietly, his eyes locked on mine. You've lost Tom. You've lost him for good. Do you even know what that means? I couldn't look at him. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of his words. I had lost everything. I had lost Tom, the man who had loved me for so many years, who had been a part of my life. And I had lost Ben's too. The man who had made me feel wanted, alive, free. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I whispered. I didn't want to lose Tom. But I don't know what to do now. I don't even know who I am anymore. Benz didn't respond. He sat there, his eyes softening, but there was still that coldness between us. It wasn't the same as it had been. It wasn't the spark I had once felt when we were together. You don't know who you are, he repeated, his voice heavy. Anna, you've lost yourself a long time ago. You lost yourself the moment you started looking for something outside of your marriage. The moment you decided that whatever you had with Tom wasn't enough. I felt a sharp pang of guilt. I knew he was right. But the reality of hearing him say it, to hear him speak the truth so plainly, hurt more than I expected. I'm sorry, I said, my voice cracking. I never meant to hurt anyone. Benz didn't answer right away. He looked at me, like he was trying to decide if he should say what was on his mind. Then, finally, he spoke. You're not the only one who's lost Anna, he said, his voice bitter now, but still with a tinge of pain. I've lost everything too. I frowned, not understanding what he meant. What do you mean? He let out a breath, his expression shifting from anger to something else, something I couldn't quite identify. I've been married too. To a woman who trusted me, and now, because of this, because of us, she's gone. I lost my wife Anna, just like you lost Tom. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Benz had a wife. He was married. The reality of what we'd done suddenly felt even worse. I had assumed he was some single guy, a man who was just looking for something on the side, someone who was available. But he wasn't. He was just as tied down as I was. He had a life outside of me, a wife who had trusted him, just like I had once trusted Tom. Benz, I didn't know. I didn't know you were married. My voice was barely above a whisper. I couldn't believe it. How could I not have known? Benz nodded slowly, his eyes hardening. Of course you didn't. You didn't care. You didn't care about anything except what you wanted. And now, look at where we are. We've both lost everything. The weight of his words was suffocating. I had been so wrapped up in my own needs, my own desires, that I never once stopped to consider what Benz was going through. I never stopped to think about the consequences of what we were doing. Not just for me, but for him as well. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I said again, my voice barely audible. I thought we had something real. Benz shook his head. It was never real, Anna, it was a fantasy. A momentary escape, and now it's cost us both everything. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending like this doesn't matter. I could feel the distance between us widening. It was like I was losing him all over again. The man I had thought I could turn to was now just as lost as I was. I don't know what to say. I whispered, feeling the tears well up in my eyes. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix it? Benz replied coldly. What's broken can't be repaired. We both made choices, and now we have to live with them. He stood up, turning away from me. His back was to me now, and for the first time, I felt like I was really losing him. Not just the man I had fallen for, but the person who had, in some strange way, helped me feel alive. And now he was gone. Benz grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair, his movements slow, deliberate. He turned back to me, his eyes locking onto mine one last time. I'm sorry, Anna, he said, his voice soft but firm. But I can't be a part of this anymore. I've lost my wife because of you, and I've lost myself in the process. I have to go. He didn't wait for me to say anything. He just walked out the door, leaving me standing in the living room, a shattered shell of the person I once was, and in that moment, I realized something. I hadn't just lost Tom. I hadn't just lost Benz. I had lost my own sense of self. I had torn apart everything I had ever cared about, all for the sake of a fleeting moment of excitement. I had destroyed my marriage, and in the process, I had destroyed the man who had once made me feel like I was worth something. And now, I was left with nothing but the wreckage I had created.